All right, I'm joined by the executive producers of the comeback 2004 Boston Red Sox, Colin Barnicle and Nick Barnicle. And guys, thanks so much for joining me. I want to just start off with this. What prompted you guys to put this together to come out here in October of 2024?
Colin Barnicle and I grew up around the team as so many people have, and had forever wanted to do something on the 20th anniversary, and had kind of less than pitched it, but had talked about it with a lot of people, and it was a no, 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 and no again. And we were kind of sitting at home last August of 23 when we got a phone call from John Skipper and Howard Bryant saying, "Hey, we have sold this thing to Netflix. Would you come in and help us make it?" And Colin Barnicle and I joined as executive producers, and Colin's obviously the director. And away we went in a sprint, about a 12-month sprint. These things usually take about 18 months. A 12-month sprint where we ended up interviewing so many of our heroes, and looking forward to it coming out next week.
Yeah, what was that like for both you guys to have grown up in the area and get a chance to talk to all the cast of characters that made up those 2004 Red Sox, who of course called themselves the Idiots?
Yeah, I had worked in the clubhouse for 2 years, so I kind of saw some of those same players, not all of them though, but it's strange because I remember, we've interviewed everybody from criminals to billionaires, and when Roger Clemens walked in, we were like, oh, it was like the most exciting thing that we could see. It was like being a 7-year-old kid again, but I mean, a lot of it was, in terms of like questioning them, you're just kind of asking the things that we wanted to know, in the moment. And they were extremely great, very candid. And, the team won because of their chemistry and their camaraderie. And they're kind of the same people off camera as they are on camera. And it was just a lot of fun, just being able to kind of hang with them for a little bit.
And one thing I thought about when I saw that this was coming out was this is one of the best stories in all of sports history, but it's been written about, it's been talked about so much. So I could imagine one of the challenges being for you two is how do we present something that is also new along with just telling the full story? I was curious, without giving up too much, if you both could share one of the things you found out about the 2004 Red Sox that you didn't know before you really went into this project.
Yeah, we originally it was supposed to be 2 episodes of 45 minutes, and we doubled that. um, we really wanted to tell a story. We know what happens at the end. They come back from 3 games down against the Yankees. We as fans all know that. We were really trying to get to how the culture of the organization changed and when did it change. And one of the things we found out was, we kept building it up and building it up and building it up and going back in time because we were trying to reach that kind of ignition point. And, most of the series really takes place way before that comeback from 3-0. It starts with the buying of the team and the decision to hire a 29-year-old GM. And what we kind of discovered through the process was it's much like baseball. Failure is a large part of the game. And there was a huge amount of self-doubt from the ownership to Theo, even into the locker room on, whether they could do something, not just come back from 3 games down, but come back from 85 years, 8 decades of losing, because it's not a rivalry if you lose 85 straight times. How do you build a culture, build an organization, kind of change the way the Red Sox were being run in order to beat the Yankees? And it wasn't a straight line. There was a lot of mistakes, a lot of miscues, but that all kind of learning from your mistakes and doubting yourself and overcoming your doubts really like built this culture where they could come back from 3 down.
When you look back at the press conference when Theo takes over that job, and he talks about it as well. I mean, he's so young and he's so green, and obviously we all didn't know at that time what he was capable of. in that position, but he was somebody that grew up in the area. So he understood what the Red Sox meant and the torture and all the years of missing out on winning the World Series. And you hit on it a little bit there, Colin. What impressed you both, though, about when you think of somebody that young taking over that position and having the conviction that he did to build a team that ended up being a world champion?
One of the things that's impressive about Theo is right from the get, he seems polished, right? At relative youth and relative inexperience. That's how he kind of starts his speech that day. The team behind him, which he has said on multiple occasions, between Larry Lucchino and Charles Steinberg and ownership, John Henry and Tom Werner, the idea that they made the choice that they were going to go with this kid, 28-year-old, 29-year-old, is really kind of incredible and remarkable. But of course, he's an incredible and remarkable guy with a ton of skills. I just found out yesterday, I was talking to someone, I heard a story. Theo does the press conference, I believe it was a Monday in November of 2002, and does the press conference. And that night, Larry Lucchino flew to the White House, where he had been invited by then President George W. Bush to come down for dinner. And he comes in the White House, and President Bush says to Larry, a 28-year-old? And he says, yeah, but he went to Yale. And Bush turns to Larry and says, that's strike two. So you learn more and more about the more you kind of dive, you'll never know everything, but you learn more and more and more.
Yeah. And I thought what was great about the documentary is you just hit on, Colin, a little bit before, is you set up 2004 by going into great detail about 2003. And you can't tell the story of 2004 without 2003. And a big part of the first episode, as people will see, is that there's a focus on Kevin Millar. And he's a big personality. We see him in the media nowadays. But he becomes a big part of the culture of what the Red Sox end up becoming in 2004. And it's amazing to think that he was headed to Japan to play baseball before the Red Sox stepped in to ultimately bring him aboard. What do you think this team would have been without Kevin Millar? Because you see it in the footage, just how much of his personality gets injected into this team and what this team ends up becoming on a personality side.
Yeah, it's amazing how many of those guys that ended up being core players, their career was in Major League Baseball was over. I mean, David Ortiz's career was over. He was released. Kevin Millar was going to Japan. Bill Miller had a broken kneecap. I think what Kevin did in the clubhouse for the Red Sox is sort of a reflection of what Theo did in baseball operations or what John Henry did in the ownership box, kind of changing the culture. You know, those great Red Sox teams before that had lost, the line was always 25 guys, 25 cabs. And Kevin kind of brought everybody together in a way where they were going out to dinner together on the road, 25 guys, which I can't imagine the bill or the reservations for that. But he really kind of changed the way that the clubhouse operated, the way the team got along together. So they were all kind of in the foxhole together.
And one part about the 2003 season that you guys hit on is obviously Game 7 and Grady Little's decision to not take out Pedro Martinez and leave him in the 8th inning, and the Yankees end up tying that Game 7 in the ALCS and winning it on the Aaron Boone home run. I thought that part was so fascinating where you talk to Grady Little and you can almost tell that there's still some pain there as he relays those memories of 2003. What was it like to sit in with him and talk to him about 2003? And how do you think he still contextualizes that in his own mind?
I think the context there is interesting from him. He won 95 games back to back as a manager and then got let go. That like never happens except in Boston. And I think for him, his fingerprints are all over that 2014. I mean, the reason David Ortiz got the confidence to become Big Papi, the reason Kevin Millar became such a huge player in that lineup is because of Grady Little, you know? And I think he deserves credit for that. He made a mistake in Game 7. I remember he turned to me and he said, you know, when when you're at Yankee Stadium, like you have to make the decision. And he said, "Where were you?" And I said, "I was at Yankee Stadium, Game 7, 2003. I was about," and he was like, "Oh, you were?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was so decked out in Red Sox gear, with 55,000 Yankees fans around me. It wasn't exactly the best time.
And going back to watch this, I lived through this time period, and when you live this sport and you're so on top of it, you understand what's going on. And you guys have already put out a short about the deal in which A-Rod was supposed to be sent to the Red Sox. That ultimately doesn't happen, and he goes to the Yankees. But in re-watching this, it did strike me just how much discord there was amongst the team, considering Nomar didn't get traded and Manny also didn't get traded, and they had to come back to the team. What was that like to put together, and how important was it for you guys to make sure to get that context into what was going into the 2004 season? Because you almost look at the onset of it and say, how could this end up becoming a championship team until it ultimately plays out?
I think that's a good question, and we've actually covered the deal, the A-Rod part of it, twice, and have learned more and more every time we cover it. Dan Shaughnessy summed it up perfectly when he said, "It's complicated and boring, but ultimately it didn't happen." The inside baseball of it all, we really felt fascinating. But the things that come out of it are, yes, we've got kind of two dudes headed into the '04 season that it's not exactly perfect. You got Manny Ramirez, who's otherworldly talent. And Nomar Garciaparra, who I think we do a nice job in this series. Howard Bryan and others kind of paint the picture for us. You forget, this was the dude. He was the guy. He was Boston. I mean, this is kind of before Tom Brady's rise. This is before the current Celtics core. He was the dude, number 5. And he's not happy. Manny's not happy. And you kind of laugh off Manny, but he's, a pretty integral hitter in the American League. To be able to overcome that, that's Kevin Millar's great genius. To be able to overcome that and get them trying to head in the right direction, and then they realize in July, this isn't going to work. And Theo's genius is, I'm going to get rid of Nomar. And they do the deal. It's incredible.
It's one of those no good deed goes unpunished type things where it's, the team really was able to get to that Game 7 the year before because of their clubhouse culture. And they kind of, the front office, by overreaching, kind of hurts that clubhouse culture. And they have to rebuild it back in real time during a season where they're fighting for first place with the Yankees. I mean, I think
relevance at one point.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin Millar, the day before that fascinating July 24th fight game versus Veritek and A-Rod, he hit 3 home runs in the game, and they still lost. So it's that kind of sense, like, what are we doing wrong here? How do we get back on track? And Theo kind of taking it head on and deciding, I have to, I'm going to have to trade maybe the biggest name in Boston Red Sox history since Carl Yastrzemski.
And I thought it was interesting to hit on the of course, the A-Rod Veritek game, and then kind of also mention that until they made that Nomar trade, they still weren't the team that they ended up becoming. But they did win that important game against the Yankees on that Saturday, where you thought it was going to get postponed. The Yankees, for a time, actually were told that they're not going to be playing the game. Then the Red Sox players rallied the team together and said they did want to play. Why do you think that game was ultimately so important, even though they still had to figure out the Nomar situation a little bit later on?
I mean, I think Kevin Millar sums it up perfectly. That's the day we became a team. He says, we went 2-0 that day. We won the fight and we won the game. For them, they had issues coming together as coworkers, as teammates, as people trying to do this thing. They had like emotional and kind of social issues. And this thing cemented them together. But of course, the tail of the tape, which we had forgotten, was they didn't play that great afterwards. Terry Francona sums it up in the series by saying, I'm on the way to the ballpark and I get a phone call from Larry Lucchino. This is not acceptable. Good morning. And then, this is not effing acceptable. Terry got that this was a big deal. They had to get the thing going in the right direction. But it started in July 24th, playing through kind of the rain. An incredible story. Just the ins and outs of that one day, I think, sum up what became that team.
And of course, Bill Miller goes deep off Mariano Rivera, and the Sox, they then make the Nomar trade and go on from there. One big move that the Sox did make prior to the 2004 season is they did sign Curt Schilling. He originally was interested in going to the Yankees. Theo and his group, they ultimately convinced him to sign with the Red Sox. Obviously, since his playing days, he's lived a very controversial life, and he has been in the news for bad things. But he was such a huge part of this 2004 team. What made it so important for you guys to have him be one of the voices that you see and hear from in this documentary?
I think a lot of it is that he has a unique arc in it, that he comes in as kind of this savior for the Red Sox, but in doing so, he's also kind of he's competing with Pedro Martinez, and Pedro Martinez is the ultimate competitor, and it creates some friction right off the top. And the whole reason why they signed Curt is so when they go into Yankee Stadium, he does what he did with the Diamondbacks. He beats the Yankees in Yankee Stadium, and he doesn't do that right away. And it's kind of endemic of the whole kind of series of like you're trying to do something good, but it doesn't always go the way you want it to right away. But like, how do you come back from that self-doubt or that deflating moment? Like, how do you do it is kind of the operative line here. And Curt was great. Curt, like he remembered everything in detail to what pitches he was throwing on which counts. And he's a huge voice for that team. Obviously that bloody sock game 6 is, right up there as maybe the greatest sport moment in Boston history. It's kind of the Willis Reed that they have in New York. We have Curt Schilling in the bloody sock.
And I think if you look back at the 2004 ALCS, there are so many what ifs in that series. I'm curious if you both can chime in on this. Again, now having chronicled it for Netflix here with this great series, The Comeback, 2004 Boston Red Sox. What's the biggest what if that you guys think about when it comes to that ALCS? Like, what if something went differently?
For me personally, and I hate to harp on this, we did ask about it. It's been covered. It's well covered. And we asked Mr. Torrey about it. What happens if the Yankees start bunting on Curt Schilling? There's a 10 of those. There's the Tony Clark moment. There's so many what ifs. Every game is a what if. But for me, the bunting thing was like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Why didn't they do that?
There was a lot of being a Red Sox fan. You're just fatalistic. You're just waiting for something bad to happen. And for me, it was the Tony Clark play is great. But when the umpires reversed Alex Rodriguez being out when he slapped the ball out of Bronson Arroyo's glove, that to me, that play always goes against the Red Sox. I remember the phantom tag on Chuck Knobloch in '99, and the umpires didn't get together and they didn't get it right. And I remember I was at the park. I was at Yankee Stadium for that game and thinking, oh, they're going to get this wrong. Everybody saw it was a slap, and it's before replay. He's going to be on second base. We're going to lose this game. It's going to be awful. I'm going to have to go home, drive home, and like I always do from Yankee Stadium after a Red Sox loss. And it does seem, and like the baseball gods sort of changed their way of thinking and started helping out the Red Sox, getting those calls right.
Final question for you guys before we let you go. Considering your guys' background, as I hit on before, now that you've completed this project, what's the feeling among the both of you guys now that you're about to put this out to the world for people to consume, and this becoming a project that obviously started from where you guys were as kids growing up to now be something that the whole world is going to be able to see, and obviously Red Sox Nation is going to consume?
Well, we get a World Series ring, right? I think that's the that's the thing we're going for.
And a vote on who we're signing for free agents for this year.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is, we could have done 10 episodes on this. And it is definitely a well-trod story, but I think we cover a lot of new grounds, especially since we kind of start way back, and showing what it takes to kind of win. We would do this story again. If someone called and said, "Hey, we do another 3 episodes on it?" We would. It's just an incredible thing to be able to kind of make a gigantic series about your favorite team ever and your favorite city, and arguably the most important moment in Boston sports history, the 2004 World Series championship. So it was kind of surreal, big hangover coming after this one, but it's been a really fun ride making this.
Not so much fun going through the old footage, and we're at a lot of the games, and it's our teenage years, so we're not exactly Chris Hemsworth sitting in the stands.
Well, I look forward for everybody to get a chance to watch this. Again, it's called The Comeback, 2004 Boston Red Sox. Colin Barnicle, Nick Barnicle, executive producers of the project. You can watch it on Netflix. Guys, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.